Sure. My name is Freddie Miars, and I play Skell.
I'm Benjamin Bratt. I play Parco Delgado.
My name is Roberto Patino. I'm the writer, creator, and executive producer of DMZ.
My name's Hoon Lee, and I play Wilson.
This show it assumes the Second American Civil War. Between two countries, there's the Free States of America in the West, there's the United States of America in the East, and it's about a demilitarized zone. Demilitarized zone is an area of land between two neighboring countries, that typically warring countries, where both countries have agreed to not have military there. It's a neutral territory. Our demilitarized zone is Manhattan, the island of Manhattan, which has been an abandoned land, a forgotten land. It's been boarded up, you can't get in, you can't get out. So our show is set against war, but it is not a show about war. It's really a show about this abandoned people really reclaiming their identity, reclaiming their territory, and setting the stage for a new table of power moving forward. It's about people coming together. Super, super complicated and multi-layered world. Everything I just explained is noise. That's all out there, right? The narrative aperture of the show is really, really simple. It's about a mother, this fearless medic, who enters the DMZ to look for her son, who she lost on evacuation day. So to me, the comic book just presented a world that is very rich, but it also presented this different kind of opportunity where you could turn that world inside out and really run in the opposite direction. And instead of telling a grim story or a bleak story, you can start 8 years later and tell the story of what happens next, which is the story of hope, which is the story of rebuilding. And that opportunity was really kind of the initial macro-magnetic draw. The second, I would say, point of attraction to the property was just the opportunity to take one of the secondary characters in the graphic novel, in my opinion, the most interesting character of the graphic novel, this medic named Z, and really kind of take the creative guardrails off and build out a real person. In the graphic novel, she's pretty underserved, pretty two-dimensional, so I took the spirit of Z. I gave her a first, a middle, and a last name, and built a narrative around her, and infusing this world, kind of shying away from the very testosterone-driven, very masculine, laced tone of the IP, and approaching it from a mother's perspective, infusing it with a feminine energy.
Yeah, one thing you find immediately in the DMZ is that there's no organized form of government whatsoever. The 300 or so thousand that either chose to remain behind in their homes or were abandoned by the two respective warring factions are sort of surviving day to day. There's a lack of resources, there's a lack of food and electricity and water, but somehow they're making it, and they enjoy a kind of freedom in making their own decisions day to day. But what clearly becomes something to deal with is there are different factions, gangs, if you will, that have broken off and are vying for control of the DMZ. I played Parco Delgado, who is a member of the Spanish Harlem Kings and someone who has a military background. But whether he has delusions of grandeur or not, his intent is really to create a seat at the table and vie for the governorship of the DMZ, politicize essentially this community and create a power dynamic that he's only known from his experience in working in the Army, essentially establishing old ways of operating. It doesn't work, it's toxic. But he's a guy that clearly thinks of himself as a man of the people, but what we come to learn is nothing's beyond him in terms of his reach for power. He will do anything to attain it and then keep it.
Wilson represents voices or personas in the DMZ that have found opportunity in all of the mayhem, and he's figured out a way to reinvent himself from his past life. And this represents to him a success story. And so when he starts to organize first the District of Chinatown, but then when he vies for the governorship as well, he is really looking to build upon that idea, the idea that he only achieves success through this sort of intense amount of freedom / chaos. And so that's sort of the platform that he builds off of. And you can start to see where a character like Parco and Wilson, where they do intersect, you know, in their self-interest or in the ways that they are motivated by actually good things for their people, and then where they start to sort of fall prey to, you know, pursuit of power, really. It's a really interesting dynamic because these two poles end up creating a gap into which Alma, Rosario's character, really stands and offers another alternative. And that's such a huge part of what this show brings forward, is that the idea of a binary choice is an illusion.
These two are the leaders of their own individual factions, and where Wilson's character, you know, he dominates and monopolizes off of the gold and the grid. Parco's character uses power, and one of the ways he reinforces that power is through Skell. I'm essentially his right-hand man, his confidant, and I do all of his dirty work. And, you know, as the series progresses, you see how Skell has essentially used, Parco, I'm sorry, has used Skell as a means of elevating his status in the DMZ. And at the same time, Skell offers a sort of preservation of the world before in his art. He's also an artist. And sometimes that art manifests also in his killings. So every time he does some of the dirty business, he crosses off those names. And so that's how that plays a part in all that. And then, you know, Tenny, who's basically Wilson's, you know, ward. She's introduced to Skell, and then this idea of freedom and the world outside of the DMZ is introduced. It's put in place in Skell, and it challenges his loyalty to Parco. And as the story unfolds, you see where his loyalty really lies, and you know, he makes a decision for himself.
Yeah, Tenny, played by Sidney Park. Unbelievable performance. Really kind of awakens a sort of, I would say, repressed, heavily buried part of Skell that he has not been in tune with for the last 8 years.
Yeah.
Which in our show is when the war picked off. You know, in a lot of ways, Skell, I would say, is a bit preserved in his state of mind from back then.
Absolutely. I mean, there's survival is, you know, every day in the DMZ is a means of surviving. And he relies heavily on Parco's power, but Tenny provides a different outlook for him and a way in which he can survive beyond force, beyond his you know, vicious nature and this identity that he's created that really has been, you know, in large part because of Parco. So yeah, I mean, he's an interesting character, highly complex, and we see the duality of an individual caught between the past and the present state with Skell.
The beauty in what Roberto wrote and has created is as you can hear from all of us, he really, narratively speaking, he focuses on like the minutia of human interaction. Mm-hmm. It really is a family saga on some level. It's about family relationships, whether through blood or through community. But at the end of the day, it's the conceit where all this takes place that is so compelling, so provocative. Against the backdrop of war, the island of Manhattan is completely abandoned. What does that look like? So there's this there's this really compelling balance that exists, and as a viewer, you can't help but imagine in your mind what it would be like for you as a survivor potentially in the DMZ, of watching this family drama play out, but also kind of looking for the hallmarks of what Manhattan used to look like. Imagine this, the most metropolitan, most beloved city in the world, whose bridges and tunnels are completely shut off. If you're on the island, you can't escape. If you're outside the island and want to get on, you can't get on. Anyone who makes a move in either direction will be shot. That is an external pressure for the narrative he created, just creates tension throughout the entire piece.
And I think you're hitting on something where another kind of level of the dichotomy between these two characters. Parco understands that power is the greatest currency here, and that manifests in the form of real estate, right? Both of these warring parties are vying for this trophy plot of land. Wilson, on the other hand, sees it differently, where he sees freedom. He sees this place as a person's first true opportunity to make truly free decisions outside the sort of social pressure of, or the system dictating what is right and what is wrong. And that's what he uses as his currency. Here you are truly free, which is, I think, a very compelling idea insofar as, we live in the land of the free, the United States of America, and yet we have people in power that are actively working to strip basic freedoms like self-identity, rights to your own body,
Voting rights.
and so Wilson's angle of the DMZ is, this is a land that is truly free. This festival has such a amazing energy, and it's the first time that we're back, right?
Yeah, it's a
for
bit
the
surreal.
last 2 years. So there is a definite there are definite good vibes. I've been a fan of this festival since I was a kid, and I'm just thrilled for the world to get to see DMZ. I think it's going to be a surprising experience. It's a DC property. It's falls under the label of post-apocalyptic, but it's not. It's not. There is very little war in the show. There's action. There's a lot of action, and there's a lot of thrills.
Yes, sir.
But war is really kind of a ghost that lives in the peripheries of our world, and I think a lot of people will be surprised by the emotional journey of this show.